Hey folks, thanks for stopping by. Weather in Ohio is finally cooperating and I was able to get quite a few things planted in the garden in the past week. I planted potatoes in containers. I'll have a separate video for that. Today's video I'd like to talk about how I planted tomatoes and peppers, the different types of supports that I use, as well as how I incorporate leaf mulch and compost and a little bit of this and that. So let's take a look. So my husband just put a fresh coat of stain on the fence. It looks really good. In this bed, I have tomatoes planted. And so I use this A-frame for my indeterminate heirloom slicer varieties. And so I like to plant them deep. Many people choose to plant them like laying them down into a trench, but I prefer just to go a little deeper. I think both methods probably work just fine as far as space requirements. This is just what I like to do. It's a little bit easier for me. So I go down fairly deep. Depends on the size of my plant. Also see the adventitious roots that are beginning to form right here and help anchor the plant a little bit better, giving it more nutrients too. And so I always remove these lower branches. And again, what I'm going to do is just plant it all the way down in the hole, and then these will also root in. Today I'm just using, this is the fertilizer that I have on hand, so I'm just going to use a little bit. I can plant these tomatoes pretty close together, closer than recommended, as long as I feed them well. So I give them a handful of fertilizer. I'm not partial to any particular brand. I usually just get organic, natural based. So then I'll put that down in there all the way. Then I'll put compost all around it first. And then I will backfill. We just had rain a few days ago, and underneath this mulch, the soil stays pretty wet. So that's one of my secrets to not having to water too often. Of course, in the heat of the summer, things will dry out, but this straw or leaf mulch is a great way to help conserve moisture. All right, so that looks pretty good. I may even, probably even gonna go ahead and pull off these bottom branches. There, all right. And then just cover them back up with mulch. I can keep my chicken out of the bed. They should be okay. I just let these grow up the A-frame. And because they're indeterminate, they'll continue to grow all season. And so then I just let them vine up and over, and it'll become a tangled mess later in the season as they all vine. And so this seems to work. I plant lots of plants pretty close together. Like I said, as long as I feed them, I get a pretty decent yield. So I just dig it pretty deep, and some fertilizer, remove the bottom leaves. Put it down in there. Backfill it with compost, make sure there's no air pockets, and then finish the rest of the way with soil. Cover it up with mulch. I think I'll go ahead and take that one off too. There we go. In this bed, I have primarily determinate tomatoes, meaning that they set fruit pretty much at the same time. These are good for canning. These are your paste tomatoes. And then I just had a few extra of the heirloom slicers that I put in the back row. Now these, because they're determinate, the plants do not get really big. And so I find that large tomato cages work really well. Tomato cages don't really work well for tomatoes in general, especially the binding type, the indeterminate. Indeterminate just means that they continue growing all season until they get killed by the frost, cold temperatures, what have you. And so these determinate varieties, they will finish early, and sometimes I can even plant other things in their place. And the peppers are doing well. A little bit of slug damage, but that sort of comes with using leaf mulch. They like to hide in there. They usually don't do too much damage. I always start by loosening up the leaf mulch from last year. It gets a little compacted over the winter. And just like the tomatoes, most of the plants I grow, I start from seed. These are well rooted and they're ready to get into the ground. It's about a week earlier than I usually plant them, but the 10-day looks good and rain is expected the next few days, so the timing is good. See, my soil is full of a lot of clay. It's kind of sticky, but it's got lots of earthworms. Whether or not they are good is debatable. Most of the earthworms around here are invasive, but they do sort of loosen the soil and aerate it. So then I just put a handful of fertilizer in. Today I'm using Espoma plant tone, and then I always like to surround the roots with compost, and that is so that it has good microbial inoculation to get things going. Good soil is key to having good plants. So then I take my soil, it's really sticky and wet right now. We just had a rain earlier today, overnight, and this morning. And then I just take my leaf mulch and don't pile it up too close around the base of the plant. And that's pretty much it. And I just stagger them, sort of like a zigzag, 3 rows, interspersed relatively evenly. I've got sweet bell peppers, cubanelle, poblano, sweet and hot banana peppers. Peppers can get really heavy and the plants tend to flop around, especially the bell peppers. Most of these are sweet orange, yellow, and red bell peppers, and they do get pretty heavy as the season progresses. And what I like to use are the smaller tomato cages. They're not really good for tomatoes because tomato plants get much heavier, but they work out perfectly for peppers. And so one thing that I find is pretty important is to get this lower rung as close to the soil as possible, and that stabilizes everything really well. And so then just make sure the leaves are on the outside, and then the pepper plant will grow up and out. And that's how I do peppers. I'm a bit of a pepper fanatic. I have 21 peppers in this bed. I was also able to get some onions planted in the last week. A volunteer potato. I must have missed a little baby. I rotate my crops every year, so I think tomatoes were in this bed 2 or 3 years ago. So I've got red onions in this bed here. And then I have yellow sweet onions in this bed. Garlic is doing okay. It looks like I need to give them a little bit of fertilizer. They're starting to yellow just a little bit. You can also see here how the strawberries grow in my garden. These strawberries were in one of the beds, at least a dozen years ago, and they escaped, and they have since just snaked their way around each of the beds. And I tried to control them for years, but just decided to let them grow. They're not in my way. We're going to be redoing the garden beds in the next year or two, so we'll see what happens to them at that point. But for now, they seem to be okay. They look really good this year. You can see lots of fruit developing there. I give away plants all the time. The lettuce looks spectacular. About ready to harvest quite a few. I've got my kale in this bed. I have some, it's actually shade cloth, but I use it as insect netting to keep the cabbage white butterfly out so they don't devastate the crop. These are some of my native plants that I winter sowed, just right here, like you see. I'll be potting these up in larger containers very soon. Some extra tomato plants I'll be sharing with friends. And just an update on the potatoes in containers. In the bottom of each of these containers here, I added just spare leaves and things that I collected from around the garden. And then I put the potatoes in and covered them with a mix of compost and old potting soil. So you can check out that video. I haven't posted it yet. I'll be doing that here very soon. Sorrel, spinach, and chard doing pretty good. Again, I have fencing covering these beds to keep my chicken from devastating my crops. So anyway, things are looking really good in the garden. It looks like we'll be doing some strawberry videos here pretty soon. I'll have to find some great recipes to share with y'all. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it inspired you or gave you some ideas to try something new in your garden. And stay tuned. I'll be direct sowing corn and beans very soon, and I'll be posting that potato video probably later today. Anyway, have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.